everybody talks about data centers. And I jokingly say, like, if you've worked on 5 data centers, you're like the godfather of data centers at this point. Good contractors don't go out of business because of starvation. They go out of business because of indigestion most of the time. I've seen a lot of contractors go and take on maybe too much work,
Mhm.
and they are struggling to deliver, and then their risk goes off. And I think 41%, right, of the construction industry is going to retire by
Mm.
2031, right? And so we have a lot of people aging out. So there's how do we potentially keep those people in the industry longer so we don't lose their domain knowledge, because that's what's really, really important. And like how do we take that domain knowledge and transfer it to the next generation?
Good contractors don't go out of business because of starvation. They go out of business because of indigestion. That line comes from today's guest, and it cuts right to the heart of where the industry is right now, because construction is splitting in two. Data centers, infrastructure, power, the strategic economy is absolutely booming. Meanwhile, residential, retail, and office, that's struggling. And if you're a contractor trying to figure out which side of the divide you're on and what to do about it, this conversation is for you. I'm Owen Drury, and this is Bricks Bytes. Today, I'm joined by Kris Lengieza from Procore, fresh off the launch of their new Market Intelligence webinar series. We're unpacking 3 focuses reshaping construction right now: the bifurcation of the construction economy and what it means for your next bid, the moment AI and construction stopped being a pilot and started being a deployment, and why every data center client in America would build twice as fast tomorrow if they could actually find the people to do it. So whether you're running construction projects, building a technology that facilitates these, or just trying to understand why everything costs so damn much to build, let's get into it. Okay, Kris, good to have you back, man. It's been a while since you were on Bricks Bytes, so I'm excited to be talking to you today, and we are going to be diving into this new initiative, I suppose we could call it, from Procore, the Market Intelligence webinar series. So I think yesterday, which was the 25th of February, you done your first one. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct, Owen. We launched this series. What are some actionable things that you as a business can be doing to take advantage of or to mitigate potential risk of what we're seeing from a trend in the industry? And so that's the intention of the webinar series. We had the first one yesterday. We've got the next one will be planned for May. We're locking in the date right now, and so we'll be happy to share that with you all as soon as we put that date on the calendar. When we set up this webinar, we're like, hey, we want to focus in on kind of a couple big themes of what we're seeing, right? And if anybody's kind of surprised about some of these themes, I would actually be shocked about what I'm
Yeah.
about to say. But as we were digging into the data, as we're watching what was happening in kind of Q4 and at the very early parts of Q1 and basically January, one of the big things that we saw was that there's this bifurcation happening in the construction economy. It's basically a massive split between what we like to refer to and others have referred to as the strategic economy. So think of data centers, infrastructure, power, things that are being built for strategic advantage. And then basically the consumer economy, things that are being built for people to consume and to in their consumer lives, i.e., residential, retail, office. And that segment is struggling while the strategic is just absolutely booming. And that's a global trend. That's not just happening in North America or just in Europe. That's kind of everywhere. The second big theme that we focused on a bit yesterday was, AI has been a topic of conversation for the last year. I remember launching the Future State of Construction report with you all back in
Mhm.
April of last year. That research started in like December of the year before, and we were like, AI is coming, right? Then all of a sudden, like LLMs just exploded. Then all of last year, everybody was like, oh, we're trying stuff. We're trying to figure out what actually works. And I think we have a bunch of stories in the news right now of this. Both Turner and Skanska have both launched AI safety agents, right, for their organizations, right? They're seeing real value in. It's now a deployed thing. It's no longer a pilot or a test. It's something that the workers on the job site can get access to and take advantage of right now. Skanska and Turner have both launched.
Mhm.
There was news on Turner last week, and then we had talked to Anita Nelson with Skanska on our podcast back at Groundbreak, and she talked about the safety agent that they had built as well. So that's a really common use case that more and more people are leaning into. Last November, sorry, September, I did a panel discussion with, his name is Jacob. He's with Level 10 Construction. He was talking about submittal processing, right? Like we all do document and submittal processing, but they were saving about 2 weeks on the submittal review time, just by using agents. And at that time, it was Data Grid they were using. We have since acquired Data Grid.
Hmm.
So we want to bring that more to the masses as well. And
Hmm.
then
Cool.
I think the last third big theme is, you know, growth in like permitting and planning of projects and starts of projects are all pretty much like in really good places in most regions, but we are still struggling to actually complete a lot of those projects. And they're seeing delays and struggles due to basically the lack of talent, right? And it's not just specifically like, I need more people, I need people with specific skills, specific trades, specific project types, right? Everybody talks about data centers, and I jokingly say, like, if you've worked on 5 data centers, you're like the godfather of data centers at this point, because like there is just, they're having like, we are in a boom and it's really fast and people are trying to get up to speed very, very quickly, but those people are very, very high demand. And when you get down to the trade level, it's, we need more electricians, need more plumbers, we need more mechanical contractors. And those are now becoming the restrictions to us actually building as fast as the market is demanding. I had a conversation on a webinar that we did a week ago with Jeff Miller, the CIO of Clayco, and he was talking about like every single client that they have in the data center space would have them go twice as fast or build twice as many facilities if they thought they could actually get the people and the resources
Mm.
to go do it, right? Because it really is a race right now to get as much data center capacity online.
Mm. Yeah, that's very cool. I would say like obviously at Bricks and Bytes we do similar research, so we have a finger on the pulse. And yeah, none of it's a major shock, and it's what people are used to. But it's I suppose in some ways it's good to hear because it affirms like, yeah, this is it, right? There's not
Yeah.
like differing data depending on who you speak to. Like these are the key problems that people are focusing on. One
Mhm.
question I have would be, this is primarily focused on the US market as far as I can tell.
Yeah, so the presentation we did yesterday was a regional focused North American report. We did cover several global trends, and I can jump into that. We gave a global overview, and I think one of the things I've learned from traveling around the world and meeting with our customers is wherever I go, they all want to know what's happening somewhere else. And I actually think that's incredibly healthy. I actually think that sometimes we don't pay attention enough to what's happening in other markets. And so the reason that we started the webinar with, hey, let's take a global view of what's happening across markets, was that can actually inform what's going to happen in your market next, or give something that you may want to pay attention to, because you can see similarities between the markets. And I think when we gave the global overview, the US, interestingly enough, like is hitting some really big highs
Mm.
on our momentum index, 21% growth year over year. But the architectural billing index, which is the measurement of like how many new projects are being put into architectural design, was actually in contraction still and still
Mm.
down. So you're seeing this like separation
Mm.
of, hey, we got all these project starts, but no new projects going into design. And well,
Mm.
think of these mega projects, right? They're going to last 4 or 5 years, or they're a data center and we're going to repeat build that same data center on 12 different sites. Do I need to go and hire a new design for that? And then when we look at like at Europe, it's still very much, the UK is a market in transition right now.
Mm.
Output is at a 4-year low. New
Mhm.
orders have actually stayed pretty solid over the last year, which I think is good. And it's a lot of regulatory work that is actually trying to drive construction forward, right? New towns, planning reforms, fast track approval processes in Germany and other regions. And that's actually a theme globally we're seeing as well. Like down in Australia, their starts are down a bit there, and actually specifically like multifamily residential is like pretty heavily down, but they're actually pausing some regulation change around building codes for residential, specifically to try and reduce the administration friction that would come from that, that would potentially slow the market down anymore. And they want to help move it forward. And in the US, we see regulation on trying to get projects started faster, especially in the infrastructure, the power generation. So this theme of government and policy actually leaning in to try and, I don't know, I hate to call it red tape, but to remove some of the red tape of actually
Mm,
getting construction to start and to go, is a global theme. And we're
mm.
seeing that in many, many markets, and some are being more successful with it right away. Others are still figuring it out. But I think we'll see more of that, where people want to cut loose projects. And now that interest rates kind of globally are also starting to lower a little bit, it's making the cost of cash a little bit cheaper. But to combat with that, the cost of labor is up pretty much everywhere as well as the cost of materials.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. UK, is, you mentioned, is in a transitionary period. I think the industry, what the statistics might say, depending on like what data you consume, but typically we're in a little bit of a contraction right now in the
Mhm,
UK.
mhm,
But there is a lot of investment going into infrastructure, so
mhm,
the signals are that things will get better, but it's a little bit tricky at the moment. Like it's tough for a lot of people, and I have friends and family that run construction businesses, and some anecdotes are that this is like the hardest time since the great financial crisis, and people are making cuts and layoffs, and it's
yeah,
pretty grim
yeah.
generally.
Well, even
Um,
even even businesses going into receivership, right? We're seeing more of that across Europe as well. And I think
mhm,
it's that same bifurcation we were talking about, right? It's like if you're in the infrastructure space and you're building a lot of that type of work, yeah, you probably are actually looking and going, "Hey, I see the growth ahead of us. I see a path
yeah.
here. Things are getting better." If you're in the fit out space, if you're in some of these other things, it's a bit challenging right now, and you're maybe just trying to hang on. And I think the lesson there is, we've talked about this a lot in construction for a very, very long time. Diversification is very important,
Mm.
right? Being too heavy in one specific market is risky. Now, when that market's good, things are booming.
Mm. Yeah, and especially it is also very tricky because when you have such demand from data centers and like there's an opportunity there to grow the business substantially, like you can't ignore it. You have to make hay while the sun shines. But
Yeah,
with the fear and knowledge and forward looking sight that this will dry up, and so diversification maybe is the strategy here. Or to some extent, people like, I don't know, humans are generally quite short sighted. Like, do you just build and build and build and build and build, and then cross the bridge when it comes to it? I
yeah.
think, like, based on my experience of the industry and people I know, that will definitely be the way that they're approaching things.
What's happening with the stocks of SaaS providers isn't going to slow down those who are in the AI and the data space from building their what they need to, because it's an AI race right now, right? And
Mm,
so I think for the foreseeable future, I think data centers and power for those data centers and all the ancillary things, like people don't think about all the other stuff that goes along with data centers a lot of times,
mhm,
is going to be a pretty safe bet. But I will also say, this is a place where you have to focus on sustainable, responsible, and like predictable growth, right? Because I had an old vice president used to say good contractors don't go out of business because of starvation. They go out of business because of indigestion most of the time.
mm, mm, mm.
And
Too
I've
fast
seen
growth.
yeah, I've seen a lot of contractors go and take on maybe too much work,
Mhm.
and they are struggling to deliver, and then their risk goes off. And
Major construction projects are complex, and delivery leaders know that things rarely go to plan. The problem is that most teams don't see what's slipping or why until it's too late. The best construction leaders know that in order to deliver on schedule, everyone needs to be planning together, committing to targets, and tracking performance every day. By bringing look aheads, weekly work plans, visual staging diagrams, and daily activity briefings into one multiplayer platform, Aphex gives the world's leading projects a single place to plan and coordinate their work. Join the largest contractors across Europe, the UK, Asia, Australia, and New Zealand. Learn more at aphex.co. That's aphex.co. In construction, precision matters. Every budget line, every schedule, every document. But too often, project data is scattered across tools and departments, creating risky silos. That's where ArcDesk comes in. ArcDesk is the all-in-one construction management platform designed to connect your entire project operation, from opportunity through to tender, all the way to handover. With real-time dashboards, cost control, scheduling, procurement, and document management in one place, ArcDesk gives you complete visibility and control. Trusted by contractors, subcontractors, and asset owners worldwide, ArcDesk has powered landmark projects from shopping centers to Europe's tallest buildings. If you're ready to reduce risk, protect your margins, and deliver projects with confidence, discover ArcDesk today. Visit arcdesk.com, that's ARCH desk.com, and see how leading firms are building smarter with ArcDesk.
About AI then, because it's so like it's just completely saturated in any publication or headline that you read at the moment. And I think the particular hot topic right now is obviously this notion that anyone can go and code anything that they want.
Mm. Yeah.
Um, are you seeing? You mentioned like maybe some examples of people building their own agents, Skanska and Turner, or their safety
Yep.
agents internally. Are you seeing, or was this part of the discussion that of people actually like having maybe not even software teams internally, like just users who maybe have a slight tech or are in tune with technology,
Yeah.
building their own software now to help them with like specific pain points. Obviously, it's not going to go in as far as like building a whole Procore system. Like, there's various reasons, and that's a whole different discussion as
Yeah.
to why that would basically be impossible. But yeah, I wonder if there was any conversations around that.
So we've had two specific conversations related to this. One on the webinar yesterday, and then one on the webinar I did last week with a group of CIOs. And it was very interesting because Jeff Miller from Clayco said, one of the things he has to manage right now is everyone is a software developer now, right? And so over the weekend, a project engineer who's just savvy enough will go and vibe code an app that solves the specific problem that they had that day, right? And there's a lot of value to people and the expertise of people who are closest to the work coming up with solutions to the problems. But what he said, it gives him like great angst and heartburn is, okay, where's the data going? Now I have 400 different applications that have been built up, yeah, he's giving an example of like potentially what happens as all these new applications start to pop up. What are they being built on? What kind of control? What
Mm.
kind of permissions, right? How trustworthy we are. And so I think we will see more and more contractors build their own like workflows and solutions. I think what we are hearing from a lot of the leaders at those companies is they want to give their teams the tools to go build that in a supported, secure, controllable, permission-based environment so that they don't like you want to go build a set of agents that does work on your behalf. Get after it. It's going to work off of your Procore data. It's going to respect the permissions that you have, right? It's going to be owned in a company instance so that like it could be deployed across many different projects if it's really, really good. And
Mm.
these are where the forward thinking companies are investing right now and really starting to leverage these platforms. I mean, before we acquired DataGrid, and now I've met more and more customers who are doing that with DataGrid, right? They're using that
Mhm.
to build their agent, structure. They're able to control what data it has access to. They're able to work across systems, which I think is really, really important. They're able to use many different modals of inputs, whether that's visual, written, voice, all of those things. And you've heard my opinions in the past around like voice and visual are going to be the inputs of the future, and like forms are going to kind of be dead. I
Mm.
think we're going to see that accelerate. And then you have other companies that are saying, hey, listen, we're going to go and get on board with a platform like an OpenAI, right? And we're going to go and build on top of that. And that's the Turner story, right? Turner has brought on OpenAI. They built the safety agent. They did a whole agent hackathon internally to go build more of those things. So we're going to see more of this. I think the key is going to be how you set up your key technology pieces, your key data structure, and your permissions and your control. Because what you don't want to do, this is just like what happened 10 years ago when a lot of the context started to come onto the scene, is you don't want it to let it be a free for all, because then you'll end up with 20 different solutions using 20 different platforms and no control. And this is what happened when all the point solutions popped onto the scene. And then eventually what ends up happening is somebody goes, wait a minute, this is too much to manage. I have a person that worked on this job that did this tool that worked in this way. And now they're moving to another job, same company, same region, same project type.
Mm.
And they got to learn a whole new set of things. It's not good for your employee experience. And so I think the innovation is awesome. And I think we need to lean into the innovation. And so if I have a message to like leaders around this, it's like, figure out what your strategy is to allow your teams and your smartest people to innovate responsibly and in a safe environment, and that you support, right? There's a lot of
Mhm.
trust that needs to be built. And we know in construction, we're not the most trustworthy industry. Like, not meaning that we aren't trustworthy, but we are very short. Like, we don't give trust easily.
Mm-mm.
And so um, it will only take one bad experience, of something not working, and people go, that AI stuff, it's phooey. Right? It's for the birds, right? Like they'll just move on and then they won't give it a second chance. And so put that strategy in place. And, I think we're seeing examples of this where people are actually putting senior leadership roles inside of their companies dedicated 100% to the introduction and the successful outcomes of AI inside of their
Mm.
construction businesses.
Mhm.
And I think I've seen 3 or 4 of those
Mhm.
announcements over the last month or 2,
Agreed.
and I think that's going to become more and more common. And if you're a up and coming, middle of your career construction person that's looking for a way to like really fast track your career, I'd be thinking about, how can I bring this into the business? Because I know the business so well. And if you already know the technology a little bit, like, lean into it. Start to think about how you would bring this into the organization to make a larger impact.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. You bring up a great point there about this trust point, and the quote of the week across Bricks and Bytes is you can't vibe code trust. Like,
Well, I
you
love
could
me some
vibe
Josh
code.
Levy.
Sorry.
Josh said that, didn't he?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Shout out to Josh for that quote. And it's like 100% true. Like, you could vibe code any kind of app you want, but construction is a low trust industry. It takes years and years and years to build relationships with people, and yeah, you can't go into a terminal and type in, yeah, like, vibe code me some trust.
Well, and there's so many different types of trust that are required to really like drive AI adoption, right? Like, you got to trust the vendor, right? You got to trust like the security. You got to trust like your leadership, that they're not just trying to replace you, and like, what are their intentions, right? You got to have some like psychological safety and trust that, like, hey, if this doesn't work, like, I'm not going to lose my job just by
Mm.
trying to do something different, right? You gotta have. There's just a lot that goes around the trust that's built. It's not just one thing. Like, it needs to work. The data's got to be right. You got to have a safe space to experiment with it. Your leadership team has to be really good at like communicating like why we're making these transitions. But that all has to work in order for like you to see adoption really take off and go up and to the right.
100%. Last point then, last question on was about this point of labor and lack of labor shortages and specific skills. I think the number that flies around the US and labor shortages is like roughly 400,000. Depends what you read, but it's always
Yep.
within that region. Sure.
Yep.
Um, and yeah, obviously this is a major issue, and there's ways in which people are trying to solve this. An obvious choice being people go straight to robotics, but the reality is it's still, like, whilst there's a lot of investment and interest going into that field, it's still very early if you compare that the dent that they can have on the overall construction industry. So, with that, Kris, is there anything that Procore is seeing or be a part of conversations about how people are trying to tackle this, or is there anything that Procore is actually doing, like from a software
Yeah.
perspective, which can reduce the reliance on skilled trade?
I think there's a few things that like we are really leaning in on. Some of them are on the software and the productivity side, right? And some of them are on the actual like workforce development, right? And the reskilling of people, right? And so, I think it's like 400,000, I think 41%, right, of the construction industry is going to retire by
Mm.
2031, right? And so we have a lot of people aging out. So there's a strategy that some are implementing, which is like, hey, how do we potentially keep those people in the industry longer so we don't lose their domain knowledge? Because that's what's really, really important. And like, how do we take that domain knowledge and transfer it to the next generation? And so, one of the things that we're really trying to do with the software itself is help you institutionalize that knowledge, institutionalize the questions that get asked by the superintendent. I saw a great example of this in Data Grid with their superintendent like agent that they've kind of
Mm.
trained it to think like a superintendent, right? And so what would the questions that would ask? What would they be looking for? And that's the type of like institutional knowledge collection that we need to do. And there's companies that have put in place roles where they've kept on senior superintendents and people just to like try and extract a lot of that thinking out of them to build into systems. So that's one thing from a software perspective. I
Mm.
think the other thing from the software perspective is like, listen, managing your resources is like incredibly important to anybody that self-perform any work, and that's making sure you've got the right people, the right labor, the right equipment, the right materials. So much of our time is lost when we don't have those things aligned. And so that was one of the reasons that we pushed so hard into resource management and like redefining and reimagining what resource management actually means is to make sure that when people show up to the job, this is the lean methodology, right? Show up to the job and have no constraints and be able to do the work that you came to do that day without stopping. Imagine that. Imagine you showed up to work every day and you just got to put hands to keyboard or hammer to nail and you just kept to work all day without anything stopping you. It would be freaking amazing, right? And so that's what we're trying to do is we're trying to make it so that people can be ensure that they've got the right people, equipment, materials ready to go so that they can be as productive as possible on the job site with the hope that if we eliminate a lot of the rework, a lot of the stoppages, a lot of the constraints, we'll get a higher level of productivity and some of the demand will be, let out of the balloon there. But the other side is like, listen, this isn't going to solve itself overnight. And it's a pretty acute problem. And Procore has been partnering with universities, trade programs globally. I mean, I think we're up to like 10 now in UK and Ireland universities that we're partnering with. We want to make sure that we're helping to bring more people into the industry and that we're making sure that when those people get to their job, when they go to work for a contractor, they're prepared with the modern methods of building, whether that be technology, whether that be process. And so we create a ton of training content to provide to those programs, those apprenticeship programs, those university programs, so that they can learn how to read plans using an iPad. Seems pretty simple, but the reality is they all know how to use an iPad. They're learning how to use plans. There's probably not a world in the future where we're going back to paper. So let's teach them the way that they're going to use it in the future, right? How do they learn about robotics and what's possible out there? I was on a job with Winfic in Birmingham, and they had a great apprenticeship program where their apprentices were learning how to do robotic layout. They
Mm.
were learning how to do inspections, using iPads. They were doing a lot of like advanced coordination with, I think it was Gamma AR that they were out in the field
Mm.
doing overlays. And so that is the generation that is going to move the industry forward. And we need to make sure that they're learning the right tools from day one. And so we've invested heavily in making sure that we are supporting that. And then there's a recruitment effort. We still have to, make construction sexy again. I think everybody's talking about this, but like the reality of it is you got to get more people in the top of the funnel, right? That want to come to this industry. And I think what's really interesting about that, we do a ton of work with an organization called Construct Reach. We've done work with Boys and Girls Clubs. We do a lot of K through 12. Is people need to be thinking about this as a career as early as like middle school, or when they're like 10 and 11, like they've never really thought of it as a path, right? And I know like one of my three kids is like, dad, I love to build things. Like I would love to like not like sit behind a desk. And like she's very creative, but she also loves the physical nature of things, loves Legos, loves like playing with circuits. Like these are the things that, in the past, somebody would be like, go be an engineer, right? Like, go like do this. Maybe the right path for them is more hands on and in the trades. And we need to get more people on that path. And, we also have the elephant in the room that, only about 10% of the workforce is female, yet 50% of the population is female. And so there's an
Hmm.
entire untapped market for us there of getting more women and allowing them to be successful and to grow in those organizations as well. And so we need to lean into that of bringing a broader demographic into the industry to solve some of these labor challenges as well. And that starts by making sure that the job sites, the projects, the roles are well supported and well suited for everybody, because there is a lot of talent out there that we could tap into that we haven't done today.
Yeah, very cool. Okay, Chris, very insightful. If people want to learn more, or read into the webinar series, I'll put a link in the show notes here,
Right.
where they can watch the full presentation from you. And of course, I hope this conversation has also been helpful for people to understand a bit more of the bit more of the, as I say, finite context and the conversations around what you were releasing. So thank you, Chris, and looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Owen, for having me on, and great conversation as always.
Thank you.